What made you smile today?
Seeing you. Getting to hang out with people I haven't seen in a long time, and getting to watch people pummel each other. Just kidding. Watch a UFC fight for the record. But getting together with friends I haven't seen in a long time is definitely what puts a smile on my face.
In this season of life, what's life teaching you?
In this season of life, what's life teaching you? What I should be prioritizing, especially when it comes to work. Work's been a bit challenging the last few months, and it has taken a bit of a toll on me. So it really comes down to deciding how I want to treat myself, how I want to be treated by others as well, and starting to make some important life decisions at my age and my status as a single guy, I guess you can say. Trying to figure out what the next few years are going to look like and what I'm going to do about it to hopefully make myself happier.
What do you think you'll do about it?
I gotta kick myself in the butt, basically. I'm not, as I'm sure you know already, I'm a fairly lazy person. So for me, I'm if I think about schoolwork, for example, I was never the person that was ahead of the assignments. I always procrastinated and tried to do them the night before. So that kind of spreads throughout the rest of my life, including work, including dating, including other stuff. So eventually I'll come to a sense of dread where it's like, oh, I better get started on something if I want to achieve anything in the near future. So either I wait for that moment to come or I try to be a little bit more proactive, but knowing me, it's probably going to have to be the former rather than the latter.
When do you think that moment will be?
I don't know. The way I tend to work is something just usually clicks and then I start doing it, but it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I wish I could have solved that answer by now. If so, I would have been the CEO of some startup that would have been a Fortune 500 company by now. So we'll just have to wait and see. I wish I had the answer.
How do you know you'll recognize that moment?
That's a good question. I guess it'll be after I see the effects of me trying to push harder on something, whether it's like looking for a new job or pushing to get more promotions in my current job or trying to be more active in dating or self-improvement. Right now I'm kind of taking things passively. So I'll know when I start switching that, being a little bit more active and proactive, that it's finally, I guess the flip is finally switched. Or sorry, switch is finally flipped.
In your most challenging moments, what are your thoughts?
So I grew up in a very, a family that was a bit critical of each other. So when I start feeling a little down, I tend to be very self-critical. And I know that's not usually how people are able to overcome that hardship or succeed better. And I know everybody's different, everybody has different ways of doing it, but for me, I've always been very self-critical. And so when I have those challenging moments, I tend to probably put myself down more than necessary. But it also has been the way I've been able to recover and overcome, and then eventually get back to a quote unquote normal state of mind. But that doesn't mean that it has to be that way. It doesn't mean there aren't better ways to approach this. So I do think surrounding myself with the right folks, for example, UK, would be a good way to challenge myself to think a bit differently, especially when I am feeling burdened or challenged or overcome with negative thoughts. I do think making sure it's something I don't do really much is talk to people about it. And I think ever since business school and starting with you and having friends like our classmates, it's really helped me to think and approach life differently. So I am on that track, but when I'm by myself, and especially because of COVID, I haven't been able to see you guys or talk to you guys as often. It really does bring me back to my, quote unquote again, natural state, which does take work to change and maintain that change.
In those challenging times, Sean, what keeps you going?
I guess it's it's probably gonna be a familial and a cultural thing. So for me, I am not very individually minded. I've been raised in a family and a culture that's always like, hey, like, I mean, it's good or bad, but think about what others will think, or think about what we would think. And so usually I always put that above my own personal self-interest. So for me, it's like thinking about, hey, if I let this, or if I don't overcome this, or I let this bring me down, what would my poor mother think? She's invested a lot of time and effort and love to make sure I succeed, and if I don't overcome or succumb to a challenge, then I would feel like I'm disappointing her the most out of all people, and that fear of disappointment in others is what tends to drive me to make sure I don't let them down. And other people might think, hey, you shouldn't be driven by that. You should be driven by your own self-preservation, self-interest. But I think this is what's driven me so far, and it has worked relatively well. And I also have obviously a little bit of personal self-interest. I want to make sure I feel like, hey, I can overcome things myself. But at the end of the day, I think the societal pressure is what helps me to make sure I feel like I have a lot of support because of that as well. So I think that's what helps a lot.
Are there other resources or ideas that support? Resources could be books, it could be therapy, ideas could be philosophy or religion, or anything else that doesn't come to mind.
Interesting. So I watched a lot of YouTube videos on different languages, different cultures, different peoples, and I do think even though that's like a solitary activity for the most part, it does allow me to extend my own personal thinking to learn what others do and how they approach situations. Like for example, I might watch a TED Talk on some kind of psychological traits, or how people think and approach different complex situations that might be challenging. So I think that helps a lot. Could I make use of people like yourself, King, or other friends? Sure. I think that is something that I need to learn to be better, because again, I come from a bit of a culture that you don't really talk about your issues, your problems, your difficulties. You kind of handle it and overcome it yourself, because it's what's basically expected. You're not supposed to show any kind of weakness to others. So that is something I'm trying to learn, whether I'm okay doing that, like overcoming that and maybe sharing more. Like even doing this whole conversation, I think it's fair to say for the viewers that King had to put really pressure. Even during this conversation, it took a lot of convincing on King's part to make sure I express myself. I think it's probably good for me to do that, because I don't ever do it. So thank you, King, for giving me this opportunity. And let's see what I take away from it and learn.
What does it feel like to share your story?
Oh, hate it. I hate talking about myself. Always been taught humility, and again, coming from a family where you're not supposed to show off per se, and we always think, we bring up, even when you succeed, it's commended, but we also bring up the negatives. It's kind of like the typical Asian family stereotype. So for me, I hate showing off. I hate talking about myself, which to me, again, feels like showing off. So the people that know me always know I tend to have self-deprecating humor. I don't mind being the butt of jokes as long as everybody's having a good time. So to try to talk about myself, especially in a positive light, or trying to show any kind of weakness, definitely makes me uncomfortable. I'm the type that never likes watching videos of myself, like to practice public speaking and things. I hate it with a passion. So I probably won't even watch this video later. So let's see, maybe that's a challenge I can overcome and try to be better at. But yeah, for me, it's really making myself open to criticism or showing weakness. Like those things are hard, and I'm sure it's hard for a lot of people. It's not just me. So it's I'm not unique in that circumstance, but it is something I probably have a little bit less experience doing compared to others.
What value do you see in sharing your story?
It's funny you asked that question, because when you asked me to do this, first thing I said is, this is not a value add for anybody to listen to. Talking about self-deprecating humor. That's a good question, man. I hope if anybody ends up watching this that they get some value out of it. What I think people can get out of it is, I guess it's gonna sound pretty mundane, but essentially, I guess it's okay to talk about yourself, which I'm sure a lot of people know, but it's just another obstacle, challenge. If you feel like you can't do it, you don't want to do it, just another obstacle, challenge that you can overcome, challenge yourself to achieve, execute, maybe the snowball going to help you overcome something else that's challenging you in your personal life, work life, family life, whatever have you.
If this were your last day on Earth, what would you do?
This is my last day on Earth, what would I do? I would have to spend time with my family. Family means a lot to me. I'm a very introverted person, so I tend to stay at home a lot or recover my energy being solitary, being by myself. So for me, if it really is the last day, I think the last people I want to be with are my loved ones and my close ones. So I'll probably try to do some kind of activity with them or a dinner or something along those lines.
What's the best advice you've received?
Maybe it's just doing this activity falls in line with that, but putting myself out there. A few years ago, I had a friend, you've heard his name a lot, King, but it was Jordan, and he said, I was living a very, some might say it was sheltered life, where I didn't go out much, didn't get much exposure to the real world outside of like YouTube or media. So it was really to give myself experiences that I had refused to engage in my whole life up until that point. And that really started with business school, in all honesty. First time I had lived away from Southern California, my family, going across the country to Virginia and living by myself or in a new place I had known nobody. And it was an amazing experience, but those first few days were really rough. And I realized traveling with friends, going to so many different countries, listening to so many different people's experiences, doing a lot of things on my own for the first time, for the first time, truly changed how I think, how I act, how I behave. And it's still a long way to go for me. You can just ask Sam Q over here. But it is refreshing to know that I am still evolving and that I can continue to evolve. So I think really just, again, advice a lot of people get, I'm sure, but just exposing myself to new things and new situations is the best piece of advice I've probably received so far.
Sean, what does it mean to be Indian American?
Oh, that's an interesting one. So for me, I have an interesting family background. So I am, my dad was born and raised in England, and my mom came from India at a young age, like 12 or something, to the States. So I actually grew up in a fairly westernized Indian household. Now, the reason that's interesting, and this was kind of fortified by my business school experiences, is that Indians from India actually turned out to have a different value set, a bit of a different value perspective maybe, and it might be selection bias, the ones that come over, but I realized that even watching Indian media, Bollywood and stuff, is that there are Indians that have evolved their thinking, but given that my family came from India, or my dad, whose parents also came from India at a certain point in time, brought with them values of India at that point. So then when they came to the country and had me and raised me, we still had a fairly traditional Indian mindset. Like my grandma to this day still tells me there's certain people she wants me to marry and stuff like that. But at the same time, because of my dad's British background, which actually gave me British citizenship, I also grew up eating meat from the get-go. And I was allowed to at least taste alcohol from a young age, like 13, because that's when the culture in England. But me purely growing up in America, this probably is a feeling that a lot of the children of immigrants get, but I used to be slightly embarrassed whenever like my family would speak our language, Gujarati, in public places, especially around other Americans, because I wanted to be like, no, we're American. Like I want to be showing myself as American. I still think part of that is in my head today, where it's like, hey, I want to prove to anybody to anybody in America, like, hey, I'm one of you. Like I am an American just like you. So I try, at times in my life, I have suppressed the Indian identity to be a little bit more American. But as I've gotten older, I realized that that the fusion of cultures that are within me are what make me unique. And even though my earlier answers talk about being a little bit more less individualistic and more group oriented, I do think my experiences being an American still have given me pride in the fact that I can fuse these different cultures and be a unique type of Indian American, where I might not share the same typical American values of individual rights and all that stuff. It's like that should overcome what the group thinks. I don't necessarily think that, but it does allow me to feel unique and try to pick the best parts of all three cultures, if I may, to make me who I am. And again, it still evolves, so I might flex one of those 3% more than the others at times. And depending on if I get married, what my future wife wants to behave like, wants me to be like, then that'll change again. But I think for me to be an Indian American, so far it's been pushing a little bit more the American, but as I've gone throughout life, I've been trying to be a little bit more Indian. Like I tried to speak my language Gujarati more after college, when I started appreciating what diverse perspectives and cultures can bring to the table, and being a little bit more prideful of where I come from. So that keeps evolving. But so you ask me this question in 20 years, I'll probably have a different answer for you.